Good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, ambassadors, dear friends and colleagues. Allow me to welcome you to the Palais des Nations and to this august chamber, room 20, as you know, the room of human rights and the alliance of civilizations. Mesdames et messieurs, permettez-moi de vous souhaiter la bienvenue au Palais des Nations et dans la salle 20, la Chambre des droits de l'homme et de l'Alliance des civilisations. سيداتي أنساتي سادتي، أرحب بكم في قصر الأمم وفي هذه الغرفة بالذات، وهي غرفة حقوق الإنسان وتحالف الحضارات. For those watching on webtv.un.org, I salute you from United Nations headquarters in Geneva, from quite appropriately room 20, the room of human rights and the alliance of civilizations, which is nearly full with survivors and family members of the victims we commemorate today, and colleagues and senior officials from the United Nations system, as well as members of the diplomatic corps and other members of the public. For those of you present in this spectacular chamber, please note that we have simultaneous interpretation from and into Arabic, French, and English. Please use the headsets on the tables, should you require translation. And as I usually do, I would like to welcome the simultaneous interpreters working with us this afternoon. Director General of the UN Office in Geneva, Tatiana Valovaya, High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. I would like to thank the Director General and through her, the entire team at the UN office in Geneva, as well as OCHA, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, and OHCHR, the Office for the High Commissioner of Human Rights, for making this ceremony of remembrance possible, and at such short notice. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it has been said, and I quote, "Time heals all wounds." Time heals all wounds. I do not agree. I do agree, however, with what Rose Fitzgerald Kennedy once said, and I quote, "The wounds remain. In time, the mind, protecting its sanity, covers them with scar tissue, and the pain lessens. It is never gone." And many of you in this chamber may identify with what I'm saying. Allow me to share a personal memory with you. After all, this is a memorial ceremony. I will never forget that devastating, hollow feeling as I carried on my shoulder, along with 5 other pallbearers, soldiers, the casket containing what they called the remains of one of our colleagues killed in the bombing of the Canal Hotel in Baghdad. The remains were those of my lifelong friend, Nadia Yunus, Chief of Staff of the mission. And we were carrying the casket from the C-130 plane that had just flown into Amman from Baghdad onto the tarmac of Amman airport to a waiting ambulance. And from there, we flew to Cairo with her sister Nahid and brother-in-law Amr to her final resting place in the family cemetery. It seems like only yesterday that Nadia and I shared our last dinner together in Baghdad. In 2003, when the wounds were still fresh and raw, we decided, in what was then DPI, the Department of Public Information in New York, it has since been, excuse me, it has since been renamed the Department of Global Communication. We decided, in fact, we had a deep desire, all of us, to produce a short video to remember and to celebrate the lives of our colleagues and friends who were so suddenly and brutally taken away from us on that afternoon of the 19th of August in Baghdad. So with a lot of help from the families of the victims and a most expressive and eloquent script written by our dear friend and colleague, Jonathan Prentice, this is what our producers put together.
These are the faces of the United Nations. They came from many backgrounds, but shared a vision. They embody our ideals, and they sought to realize those ideals throughout their lives, which were so violently and prematurely interrupted. "22 faces of our consciousness, 22 aspects of our common humanity."
Remember when you told me 3 to 6 months?
Yes. Together, they were the United Nations.
I said yes.
As individuals, each left his or her own mark on our lives. Each of us recalls them through a different prism. They were and they remain mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, husbands and wives, brothers, sisters, colleagues, and friends. We each have different memories of them, some of them overlapping, others entirely separate. But we are unanimous in recognizing the unique place they occupy in our hearts and in the history of the United Nations. They came to Baghdad, men and women from many different countries and backgrounds. They joined together to do the work the world asked of them in very difficult and complicated circumstances.
Hi. Hi. Welcome to Baghdad. Thank you. We have a huge task ahead, and one that my colleagues, I'm sure, will help me carry out.
What they shared, above all, was a stubborn refusal to accept things as they are. They rebelled against the status quo that too many accept.
Very proud that you, Iraqis, have upheld the ideals and the role of the organization through exceedingly difficult times.
They believed that despite everything, the United Nations can and should respond to the grievances of the forgotten and voiceless of this world. Mixed in with this was a desire to live life fully with spirit, passion, and enthusiasm. They had absolutely no patience for apathy, individual or collective, in the face of misery. They knew, intuitively and through raw experience, what human dignity really is, what it really means. They understood because they had witnessed or themselves suffered the indignity that humans so often heap upon each other, and they were not willing to accept that. The United Nations is the sum of its parts. On August the 19th, 2003, that value, that sum, was greatly diminished. Our friends and loved ones are indispensable. Our constant challenge in the years to come will be to live with the ever-present pain of their absence, to remember their inspiration, selflessness, and friendship, and through our actions, never to forget. May they rest in peace, and may we, like them, always find the strength to refuse to accept things as they are.
Thank you. I will now read the names. Excuse me. I will now read the names of our colleagues, friends, and loved ones who were killed in the terrorist attack in Baghdad in 2003. And while I do so, their names will appear on the screen. Saad Hermes Abuna, Riham El-Farra, Ahmad Ahmed Salman Al-Jaburi, Riyad Shakir Mustafa Al-Mahdawi, Omar Qahtan Muhammad Al-Urfali, Lin Asad Al-Qadi, Ranilo Bueno Ventura, Gillian Clark, Arthur Helton, Rick Hooper, Rida Husseini, Ihsan Taha Hussein, Jean-Selim Kanaan, Christopher Klein Beekman, Manuel Martinoir Fernandez Heredia, Khidr Salim Sahir, Alia Ahmed Sousa, Martha Tees, Basim Mahmoud Otaiwi, Sergio Vieira de Mello, Fiona Watson, and Nadia Yunus. The first message of remembrance today, ladies and gentlemen, is from the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, which comes to us by video from New York.
This year's World Humanitarian Day marks the 20th anniversary of the deadly attack on the Canal Hotel in Baghdad. On that dark day, we lost 22 colleagues, including Special Representative Sergio Vieira de Mello. That tragedy marked a change in the way humanitarians operate. Because today, although humanitarians are respected around the world, they may also be targeted by those who would do them harm. This year, global humanitarian operations aim to get life-saving aid to 250 million people in 69 countries, 10 times more than at the time of the Canal Hotel bombing. Sadly, funding is far off track. As crises multiply, it is unacceptable that humanitarians are being forced to reduce aid to millions of people in need. Other challenges have also multiplied over the past 20 years. Rising geopolitical tensions, a blatant disregard for international humanitarian and human rights law, deliberate assault and disinformation campaigns. Humanitarianism itself is now under attack. But these tests have made the global humanitarian community stronger. Humanitarians, who are mostly national staff working in their own countries, are even closer to the people they serve. They are finding new ways to venture deeper into disaster-stricken regions and closer to the front lines of conflict, driven by a single purpose: to save and protect lives. On this World Humanitarian Day, we salute the courage and dedication of humanitarian aid workers everywhere, and we reaffirm our full support for their determined and life-saving efforts across the world. We celebrate their unwavering dedication to serve all people in need, no matter who, no matter where, no matter what. Thank you.
Secretary General Antonio Guterres, I would now like to invite Her Excellency, the Director General of the United Nations Office in Geneva, Under Secretary General Tatiana Palovaya, to make her remarks.
Dear survivors of attacks on humanitarian workers, dear families and friends of colleagues lost in humanitarian service, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, today, on World Humanitarian Day, we are gathered here at the Palais des Nations to pay tribute to our brave colleagues, to commemorate our lost friends, to honor the strength of the survivors, and to recognize the courage of the affected families. 20 years ago, on 19th August 2003, 22 UN staff members, including the UN Special Representative for the Secretary General for Iraq, Sergio Vieira de Mello, were viciously killed in Baghdad. 4 years later, in 2007, 17 UN staff died in another barbaric attack in Algiers. The attacks on UN staff and humanitarian workers across the world continue to date. We remember them and bow to their ultimate sacrifice in the service of the Charter and the values of the United Nations. I invite you all, those here in Geneva and those connecting virtually from Baghdad, Algiers, New York, and elsewhere, to join me in a minute of silence. Thank you. That tragic day of 19 August 2003 divided the lives of so many people to before and after. Today, we are joined by the survivors of the attacks. We are also joined by those who have lost fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, husbands and wives. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Mohamed Hassan and Laura Dolce, for coming forward to share your memories and thoughts with us. Every year, the number of humanitarian workers who lost their lives in the line of duty continues to grow. It leaves us speechless and shocked. Last year alone, 444 aid workers were victims of violence in 235 separate attacks. 116 were killed, 143 wounded, and 185 kidnapped. Humanitarians around the world work in some of the most dangerous places, and their service is becoming increasingly difficult. From a rocketing escalation of political instability and economic crisis to eroding mutual trust and deepening divisions within the international community, humanitarian work transforms into a more and more complicated endeavor. Yet, humanitarian workers continue their noble mission and service in South Sudan, Mali, Ukraine, Haiti, Myanmar, Afghanistan, and other places, irrespective of the challenges they face. Kofi Annan, who passed away on this day 5 years ago, who was the United Nations Secretary General at the time of the Canal Hotel bombing in Baghdad, said, "Saving one life is to save humanity itself." This sentence sums up the mission of each humanitarian worker. And I would like to extend my sincere and profound appreciation for their daily deeds in providing life-saving aid for people in the most challenging environments and in striving to create a better world where no one is left behind. World Humanitarian Day is also an opportunity to pay tribute to the thousands of those who are injured, assaulted, and killed in acts of terrorism. On Monday, we will mark International Day of Remembrance and tribute to the victims of terrorism. It is by thinking about the many inspiring men and women that we have lost that we can draw renewed strength. Their legacy lives on and remains a guiding light for everyone in our UN family and beyond. We also need to continue advocating for the safety and security of aid workers across the world, and we will pay our most meaningful tribute to them by carrying on their work no matter what. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Director General. I would now like to invite His Excellency the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Under Secretary General Volker Turk, to say a few words.
Dear colleagues, dear friends, at the core of humanitarian action, and actually United Nations work more generally, lies compassion, empathy, and solidarity. We are driven by a commitment to alleviate suffering and to protect human dignity, no matter what. Today's commemoration is a deeply painful one, and it's the second one for us in the Office of the High Commissioner, because we had one this morning with a number of colleagues as well. Last week I was in Baghdad myself in this 20-year anniversary, and we had a very special ceremony on that occasion because we wanted to give it a sign of solidarity with the loved ones and the families who have lost their loved ones. It's been 2 decades of heartache and loss for the people who loved them. 2 decades of asking again and again how and why. And while the grief may ease with the passage of time, as Ahmed says, it never truly departs. My thoughts are with the survivors and the families and the loved ones of the people whose lives were cut too short. And my heart goes out to you, all of you, and to the ones who listen. The loss of your loved ones will be forever mourned. And I honor the thousands of colleagues who work day in, day out, amidst conflict and disaster, with the sole objective of saving lives and helping the people who need this help the most. So World Humanitarian Day is also a reminder of the selflessness and the dedication of people who work in this line of work, and we could see it just from the portraits of the people that lost their lives in Baghdad and in many other places around the world ever since and before that. And it is indeed shocking that the data released just yesterday paint a harrowing picture. 444 aid workers were victims of violence in 2022. This is a deliberate violation of international law, and it has to stop. We need better duty of care, and we need accountability. Humanitarian work is a choice. It's not an obligation. It's an active choice to work, often amidst extreme danger. It's a decision to bear witness to the depths of human suffering, to speak out when needed, and to help based on need alone, no matter who, no matter where. I have always been deeply inspired by the people I've met over decades who have worked in this line of work, who have done this line of work. Their strength, their resilience, their deep commitment to our shared humanity. So today we honor the memory of those we lost too soon, and we stand in solidarity with those who continue to work despite all odds. You ensure respect for our fellow human beings, you restore hope, and you rebuild dignity. Thank you for the work that you do, and thank you for coming and participating in this commemoration.
Thank you, High Commissioner. The next speaker is an active and ambitious gentleman, an Iraqi citizen who was a member of the IT team at the United Nations HQ at the Canal Hotel in Baghdad. When the bomb exploded in the afternoon of Tuesday, 19 August 2003, he had been planning his wedding. Mujahid, which means struggler in Arabic, Mujahid was severely injured. And his journey, his long, long journey of treatment, recovery, and rehabilitation is a very moving and inspiring one indeed. I would now like to invite Mr. Mujahid Hassan, one of the survivors of the terrorist attack on UN headquarters in Baghdad in 2003, to share his story with us all.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends, survivors and families, it was a beautiful sunny day in the peaceful city of San Diego in California, and I was carrying out my usual duties at my job in the Cajon Valley Union School District. That's when I received a message from a colleague I met at the United Nations in 2003. She requested on behalf of the UN that I provide my testimony regarding the incident. Being one of the most defining and challenging moments of my life, I immediately agreed, as it provided an opportunity to reflect on what happened, share my story, extract lessons, and honor the lives of my colleagues and the sacrifices of the survivors. After replying to her email, a strange feeling overcame me, as if a reel of memories spanning 20 years unfolded before me and forced me to revisit certain images of the moments surrounding the incident and relive the emotions I experienced during the attack. Joining the UN in 2001 was a dream that came true. I just could not be happier, and I felt proud and honored to be chosen in 2003 as a focal point for a large area of Baghdad and was prepared to assist my community in case of an emergency as the drums of war were pounding. Before the incident, things were going very well for me. I was planning the final details of my wedding, and every morning I woke up excited, happy, and ready to work as I headed to the UN building. On that day, I was waiting for the workday to end so I could enjoy a game of table tennis. I was at my desk thinking about my wedding plans and finishing up replying to emails when suddenly everything started flying and the fragments of my wedding dreams shattered. In a rapidly collapsing building, panic and distress filled the air as people desperately tried to navigate through narrow corridors and staircases. Blood, dust, the scorching heat, and the smell of evil mingled, creating an indescribable and surreal atmosphere. Severely injured, warm blood flowing heavily from my head. Excuse me. Desperate and on the verge of losing consciousness, I leaned on a rescuer as we made our way outside. Drifting in and out of consciousness, I saw the outdoor courtyard filled with scattered bodies, thank you, of colleagues, some motionless and others fighting for survival. There was the constant sound of screams, destruction, and a collective state of shock. Soon after, I wandered with the coalition forces helicopter throughout Iraq, searching for a hospital that would accept me, but none would. Eventually, I ended up in a tent at a field hospital in the middle of nowhere called Dogwood 28. I had lost consciousness for days, and my loved ones were searching for me in vain. My fiancé and my family were consumed by worry, despair, and profound sadness. After long, difficult days that felt like an eternity, my fiancée found me. Her eyes sparkled with joy at seeing me alive, albeit in a rough condition. I will never forget that day. Never. She showed no surprise on her face, even though my appearance was disfigured and bandages and stitches covered my face and my body. Subsequently, the journey of treatment began. I was transferred, along with the other wounded survivors, to Ibn Sina Hospital in Baghdad, and then to King Hussein Hospital in Jordan. There, I lived through bittersweet days alongside my fellow wounded comrades, fighting to recover, but fighting together as one family. My eyesight deteriorated after an unsuccessful operation in Jordan, requiring me to be transferred to Moorfields Eye Hospital in London to salvage what could be saved of my left eye. I was quickly evacuated towards the unknown in Britain to embark on what turned out to be a 10-year-long journey of treatment that was filled with prayers, operations, healing, and hope. After several months of visiting countless doctors to save my left eye, I fought the good fight, but ended up losing and replacing my eye with a prosthetic one. I returned to Iraq after that. As soon as I set foot in Baghdad, I went directly to the destroyed but still standing United Nations building to draw strength, determination, and resilience for my recovery. Inside the abandoned building, there was only a watchful security guard waiting. I wandered through the building, and the lingering scent of sadness, shock, and terror remained unaltered. I searched for my dreams, memories, laughter, and colleagues, but found nothing but scattered desks and destroyed furniture. I made the decision to reestablish a happy and stable life in Baghdad and marry the love of my life and confront the myriad challenges posed by terrorism and tough security conditions. I started a large project called Orange, where we provided food, ice cream, and drinks for the community, and free games for the kids. My neighborhood came alive, and it brought me happiness to observe their children as they ate, played, had fun, and shared laughter, looking toward a promising future. Although we enjoyed times of hope and laughter, the anticipation of fear and destruction never left. And after a few short years, our paranoia was justified as terrorism resurfaced and threats of bombings reappeared. I had to make the difficult decision to close down this project to protect my life and the innocent lives of my community. The forces of darkness were on the rise, and having participated in documentaries condemning them, I was a target. So I had to quickly leave Iraq with my wife and 3 children and head to the US to start anew, once again, in unfamiliar territory. Upon my arrival, I immediately began engaging in charitable work, and later I established a nonprofit charity organization called Jannah. Jannah means heaven or paradise. To date, Jannah has completed over 165 projects offering vital services like healthcare, education, shelter, and relief efforts, including food campaigns, cooked meals, and clean water. These initiatives have primarily aided vulnerable populations such as displaced children, orphans, women, and the elderly living in conflict-affected regions within Iraq and other countries. The efforts of Jannah not only ensure that those individuals have the essential resources needed for survival and a better quality of life, but also restore their sense of dignity and self-worth. It allows them to feel cared for, loved, valued, appreciated. And welcomed. Reducing feelings of helplessness and despair that I experienced multiple times throughout my recovery. Many countries in the Middle East, and Iraq in particular, have been facing prolonged periods of war, violence, and displacement, leaving thousands of innocent lives in dire need of humanitarian aid. As a global organization committed to promoting peace, justice, and humanitarian aid, I kindly urge the United Nations to work with the Iraqi government and other NGOs and extend support and assistance to the needy people in Iraq. One quote by Nelson Mandela that drives my mission is, "Overcoming poverty is not a gesture of charity, it is an act of justice. It is the protection of a fundamental human right, the right to dignity and a decent life." This personal commitment to helping the helpless has not only provided much-needed assistance, but also served as a source of personal healing and strength. The unconditional love and support I receive from my lovely wife, Juhaina, and my kids, my hero, Abdullah, my princess, Rawan, and the apple of my eye, Humam, gives me strength and has empowered me to stand before you now, proudly reflecting on a 20-year journey of my life that has shaped me into an ambitious, happy, proud individual, determined to make a difference in the lives of those in need. And here we are, after 20 long years, reclaiming our memories as we come together as one family once again. My journey is ongoing, and I continue to heal and grow every single day as I choose not to be a victim. Yes, I still have scars on my face. But they have become a reminder of my strength, resilience, and my desire to help others. I hope my story can motivate children and young people who face difficulties and confirm that any obstacles you may face are just temporary setbacks. You only truly fail when you choose to stop fighting. Finally, I want to give a shout out to the following people with hearts bigger than the world for helping me and many other injured colleagues for more than 10 years in London. Mr. Alan Fellows, Ms. Angela Bowman, Ms. Patricia Richards, Dr. Ashley Conway, who's here with us today, and the beautiful Ms. Shaubo Al-Talabani. Thank you for everything. And last but not least, my late brother-in-law Yasin Najihlal, may he rest in peace, who escorted me through the most difficult days of my life, making sure I'm always strong, optimistic, and happy. To our friends, loved ones, sisters, and brothers whom we have lost, may your souls rest in peace. Thank you.
Mujahid, thank you for sharing your story with us. It was moving and inspiring, and a lesson to all those who want to give up. Don't give up. On a personal note, I'd like to say that our next speaker is a remarkable and brave woman whose husband, Jean-Selim Kanaan, was killed by that senseless act of terrorism. Laura had just given birth to their baby boy, Matyaslim, less than 4 weeks before the attack. He is now a splendid young man of 20. And I'm happy to see that he is here with us today. In 2017, Laura published a wonderful book called A Victimless Crime. There's a question mark at the end. A Victimless Crime, which juxtaposes her personal story with thorough research on victims of terrorism, whom she calls the silent protagonists of our time. The book brings them to the forefront, taking us through the specificities of the experience of victims of terrorism. It convincingly makes the case for greater empathy, understanding, and action by member states, civil society, and the United Nations. Representing the family of Jean-Selim Kanaan, who was killed in the terrorist attack on UN headquarters in Baghdad in 2003, I would now like to invite Laura Dolci, the Secretary of the Universal Periodic Review at the Human Rights Council, to deliver her remarks. Laura.
Oh, what an introduction. Thank you, Ahmed. Director General, High Commissioner, families, friends, survivors, colleagues. When I sat at my keyboard to look for words to say today, I realized that the most difficult part of it was going to express how raw this all still feels, as it was said, even after 20 years. Numerically, it is indeed 2 decades. By all counts, what is considered a long time. But for many of us in this room and those connecting online from different locations, it feels like yesterday. That terror day is engraved in our cells. We still feel its smells, its sounds. We relive that fear that almost stopped our breath on that Tuesday afternoon, and that animal instinct telling us that pure horror had just stormed into our lives. On 19 August 2003, the UN and the humanitarian community lost 22 of its most valiant and committed staff in the rubble of the Canal Hotel in Baghdad. People that put their best years, enthusiasm, dedication to the service of humanity. People who were and remain the best expression of the humanitarian spirit under the UN flag. On that day, we lost the people we loved, with whom we shared and built our lives, the best pieces of our souls. Somewhere, we stored their laughter, their voice, their embrace, and over time, we learned to live in their absence. And yet, they are so very close to us, especially today. To continue to give meaning to our lives without them after that horrific deflagration was hard. At times, it looked almost impossible. But life is stronger than easier, as someone told me at Jean Selim's funeral. Over the years, we have drawn resilience by holding on to each other and looking up to the sky to reach their eternal spirit. And this is why many of us traveled from different countries to Geneva to spend together this milestone anniversary. We wanted to hear the names of our loved ones be read aloud again. Thank you, Ahmed. See the blue flag for which they died and hold each other's hands on the day when 20 years feel like yesterday. Let me thank, on behalf of us all, those that made this possible. In particular, UN Geneva, OCHA, and OHCHR, which every year mark World Humanitarian Day, and this year responded to our call to honor this 20th anniversary in a dignified and inclusive manner. We've come to this gathering with our children, that since the bombing have grown into adults, as well as children, grandchildren, nephews, and nieces that were born after the death of our loved ones. This day is also for them, to acknowledge the hopes and aspirations they carry, despite the injustice and the grief they were exposed to since childhood, and to make them feel proud while their family members are being remembered. We are also heartened to spend this day with colleagues and friends of our loved ones, many of whom were seriously injured by the terrible blast. Their trauma is long-lasting, and their courage and perseverance admirable. Their witness-bearing is so important, and the UN should ensure a space where the experience of staff caught up in attacks while doing their job can be shared. This would help the organization better prepare and respond to the needs of affected staff in the future, both in the short and in the long run. Their powerful narration on World Humanitarian Day can also encourage the next generation of humanitarians. This is a great profession, motivated by a strong belief in the values of solidarity, human dignity, and equality. These values were not deterred by the terrorists and criminals that in the past years have targeted hundreds of humanitarian workers. Today, the world needs more public service than less. A growing world population that is facing decreasing resources and many global crises will require more professionals like Jean Selim and his colleagues. I wish to conclude with a few words of Jean Selim. A few weeks before being killed at the age of 33, Jean Selim wrote to me from Baghdad. But we ought to do the job, like always, trying to lift the colors of the United Nations so that they can find their rightful place again. Above all, we cannot abandon for the umpteenth time the Iraqi people who have been left in a dead end to deal in silence with their pain and the most abject injustice. It is our duty to offer them our hand without no ulterior motive other than to promote peace. I thank you.
I'm going off script for a minute. I just have this feeling of collective memory in the room. Almost everyone in this room has a memory to talk about. And yes, there is a lot of grieving, but there is a lot of camaraderie in this collective gathering and listening to each other. So thank you, Laura Dolci, and I see a lot of friendly faces in the audience, friends who over the years have stood stalwart with colleagues, Shobu, Carol, Nicole, Elpida, and the former Director General of the United Nations Office in Geneva, Michael Moeller, again, Matja, Joe, family, truly a United Nations family. I would now like to invite the chair of the Sergio Vieira de Mello Foundation, Anne Willem Bijleveld, to say a few words. Anne Willem.
Survivors and their families, excellencies, former colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Already 20 years. It seems like yesterday when I received a call from the security guard at UNHCR informing me about an attack on the UN office in Baghdad and telling me to switch on CNN. We immediately witnessed the horror occurring there and heard the terrible news that among the many colleagues killed, Sergio was one of them. A few years later, the family and some friends of Sergio decided to establish a foundation to continue his mission by honoring his memory and promoting his ideals. The Sergio Vieira de Mello Foundation defined its objectives to support individuals, groups, or institutions who, like Sergio, through dialogue, brought coexistence and reconciliation between peoples and communities divided by conflict. It also instituted a prize for individuals or institutions at grassroots level who had made a difference in trying to courageously bring communities together for peace and reconciliation while respecting the right to be different. Although honoring every year our colleagues who died on 19 August was extremely important, the Foundation also wanted to find a way to include all humanitarian workers who have given or will give their lives in the line of duty. This led us to take the initiative of preparing a draft resolution for submission to the General Assembly in New York. It would establish a special day to commemorate all those who died while performing humanitarian work. But it would also celebrate humanitarian actions courageously undertaken by actors from the UN as well as from the NGO community. In December 2008, the General Assembly adopted a resolution creating a World Humanitarian Day to be celebrated on 19 August, as we do today. After nearly 20 years of organizing an annual high-level conference on the theme of peace and reconciliation through dialogue, accompanied by a prize-awarding ceremony to a deserving humanitarian worker or workers, the Foundation has now decided to redirect its activities. It is presently in the process of entering into a partnership with the publishing house La Joie de Lire to publish a graphic book addressed to young adolescents and students to engage themselves actively in a humanitarian action at home or abroad. We would like to design a graphic book on humanitarian issues which would show how, in a variety of situations, volunteer work and engaging in humanitarian organization can make a big difference for the life of a person or group of persons in distress. Somehow, we would like to highlight the life of Sergio and his ideals as a red thread of the story. The book, which should have a large distribution among secondary school students, libraries, and bookstores, will initially be published in French and English. Our attention will now focus on publishing and distributing this book. The World Humanitarian Day, however, will continue to be celebrated each year worldwide, coordinated by OCHA New York, and Sergio and humanitarian workers will continue to live on through the book. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne Willem. I would now like to invite Ambassador Abdelkarim Hashim Mustafa, permanent representative of the Republic of Iraq to the United Nations Office in Geneva and other international organizations in Geneva. Mr. Ambassador.
منذ هذا الصباح نستمع إلى العديد من شهادات الناجين وقصص الضحايا بكل تواضع مع الكثير من الحزن ممزوجاً بالأمل. الحزن على أعزاء ضحوا بأهم ما يملكون، ضحوا بحياتهم في مسيرة العمل الإنساني، والأمل والاعتقاد الجازم بأن تضحياتهم الجسيمة لم تذهب سدى. فالإرهاب الذي حاول نشر الظلام لم ولن يفلح، ومسيرة العمل الإنساني مستمرة. الأعزاء، عوائل الضحايا والأعزاء الناجين، الأعزاء ذو وأصدقاء الضحايا الذين فقدوا في الخدمة الإنسانية، المدير العام لمكتب الأمم المتحدة في جنيف السيدة تاتيانا فالوفايا، السيد المفوض السامي لحقوق الإنسان السيد فولكر تورك، الحضور الكرام. نقف اليوم لنحيي ذكرى جميع الأفراد الذين غادرونا أثناء تفانيهم في العمل على دعم القضايا الإنسانية، سعياً منهم لجعل العالم مكاناً أفضل. ونقدم تحية خالصة وصادقة لأولئك الذين يكرسون جهودهم وأنفسهم للقضايا النبيلة لتعزيز ونشر قيم حقوق الإنسان. يصادف اليوم مرور عقدين من الزمان على الحادث المأساوي الذي وقع في 19 من شهر آب عام 2003 عندما استهدف تفجير إرهابي فندق القناة في بغداد، حيث خسرنا فيه ممثل الأمم المتحدة الخاص في العراق السيد سيرجيو دي ميلو و22 من زملائه الشجعان. وبعدها توالت الأحداث التي استهدفت العاملين في مجال حقوق الإنسان. في عام 2007 شهدنا هجوماً إرهابياً آخر في الجزائر أودى بحياة 17 من موظفي الأمم المتحدة وإصابة وجرح عدد منهم. في هذه اللحظة ذات الدلالات البالغة نتشرف اليوم بتكريم أولئك الذين قدموا تضحياتهم السخية خدمة للقضايا الإنسانية، إذ تعد هذه المناسبة تذكير لنا بالأرواح التي فقدت والأثر العميق الذي تركته على الناجين من الأفراد الأبرياء وعوائلهم. دعونا نشيد بشجاعة والتزام أولئك الذين يعملون على نشر وتطبيق المبادئ الإنسانية في جميع أنحاء العالم. نأسف لفقدان العاملين في مجال الخدمة الإنسانية والذين توحدوا في سعيهم لتعزيز الحوار بين الدول وتقديم المساعدة الإنسانية وتعزيز السلام. لقد ترك رحيلهم فراغاً لا يعوض في المجتمع الدولي. نحن مدينون لهم بالامتنان لالتزامهم بالقيم التي نعتز بها جميعاً، حيث لعبت جهودهم دوراً حيوياً في بناء عالم أفضل للجميع، وإن تضحياتهم ستظل خالدة في ذكرانا. السيدات والسادة الحضور، في هذه اللحظة الحزينة أود أن أعرب عن تحياتي واحترامي الصادق للمدنيين الذين تحملوا آثار الهجمات الإرهابية وتعرضوا للإصابة والقتل في جميع أنحاء العالم. في نفس التاريخ وبذات اليوم وبعد مضي 6 سنوات من تفجير فندق القناة في 19 من آب عام 2009، وكأن المأساة تعيد نفسها، شهدنا في العراق مأساة وطنية أخرى نتجت عن تفجير إرهابي تم بشاحنة مفخخة أمام وزارة الخارجية في بغداد، مما تسبب في استشهاد 47 من زملائنا الأعزاء في وزارة الخارجية، وخلف ما يقرب من 600 جريح. أود أن أسلط الضوء على الشجاعة الملحوظة للناجين من كل التفجيرات، من تفجير فندق القناة، والذين واصلوا مهماتهم الإنسانية بعزم وكرامة وبنفس القدر من التوجيه من التقدير. أتوجه لزملائنا الموقرين في وزارة الخارجية والذين أظهروا تفانياً وإخلاصاً في مواصلة عملهم وتحمل مسؤولياتهم والاستمرار بعملهم. بعضهم يعمل اليوم في بعثة العراق في جنيف. أحيي شجاعتهم وصمودهم كأمثلة حية تبرهن بأن محاولات الإرهابيين لنشر الظلام والخوف لن تسود أبداً. الحضور الكرام، نيابة عن حكومة العراق نود أن نعبر عن تقديرنا لجميع أعضاء بعثة الأمم المتحدة الذين أبدوا التزاماً صادقاً في بغداد وواصلوا الاستمرار بالمهام النبيلة للسيد سيرجيو دي ميلو وزملائه الكرام في تحقيق الاستقرار والازدهار والأمن في العراق. نعم، لقد نجح العراق في التغلب على فترة الإرهاب السوداء، ويؤكد من جديد عزمه على مواجهة الإرهاب في كل مكان. إضافة إلى ذلك، يشهد العراق حالياً تقدماً وتحولاً إيجابياً نحو التنمية والازدهار الاقتصادي، كما يسعى العراق بقوة لتحقيق السلام والاستقرار في المنطقة، مما يرسخ الأسس لمستقبل واعد ومشرق. ختاماً، أود أن أقدم أصدق التعازي لعائلة السيد دي ميلو ولعائلات الضحايا وأصدقائهم وزملائهم، وأتمنى أن ترقد أرواحهم في سلام دائم، ولتكن ذكراهم مصدر إلهام لنا في بناء عالم أفضل للأجيال القادمة. وشكرا لكم.
We have 3 more speakers before we listen to a musical interlude from the UN Choir and the United Nations Music Club. May I call upon Ambassador Julien Tuny, Deputy Permanent Representative of Switzerland to the United Nations Office, and other international organizations in Geneva, and permanent representative of Switzerland to the Conference on Disarmament, to say a few words.
Dear survivors, dear relatives, Director General, High Commissioner, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. 20 years have already passed since the tragic terrorist bombing of the Canal Hotel in Baghdad. It took the lives of 22 people, many of them UN colleagues, including the Special Representative for Iraq, Sergio Vieira de Mello, and wounded more than 100 people. Since then, the dangers have only grown for the UN staff and humanitarian workers. They continue today to pay a heavy toll in Syria, Afghanistan, Ukraine, Sudan, and last month also in Yemen. We gather on World Humanitarian Day to remember the victims of these attacks and to honor all the humanitarian workers who have died or were injured while serving the most vulnerable. Today, our thoughts are with the families and friends as well as with the survivors. Coming to this room, we have walked by the shattered flag of the UN office in Algiers, a remnant of the 2007 attack. It daily reminds us of the risks under which colleagues and humanitarian workers operate, sometimes becoming targets themselves as they are bringing relief to victims. Despite the risks, humanitarians continue to carry out the vital work of delivering assistance to those suffering in volatile situations and conflict areas in many parts of the world. It is their determination to serve communities in need, no matter where and no matter what, that puts into practice on the ground the values and principles enshrined in the Geneva Convention: humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. Geneva is the birthplace of the conventions and international humanitarian law, the cradle of humanitarian work and its center of competence. Being here in Geneva comes with a special responsibility, that is to speak up for the rules of IHL and the principle of humanitarian action, and even more in the face of violence and disregard for humanity. It is a fundamental commitment today more than ever. As we will continue to carry the memory and legacy of those we have lost, it is crucial to ensure that humanitarian workers are safe everywhere and that international humanitarian law is upheld. That is, I believe, a central task of the Humanitarian Geneva. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I would now like to invite Ms. Laura Johnson, Executive Secretary of the United Nations Office in Geneva Staff Union, to say a few words.
I was very honored to be asked to speak today. And that's because I'm truly honored to represent staff who do humanitarian work. Some of them are working right now in the locations where people are most at need of humanitarian assistance, and some of them are supporting that work from here in Geneva. I like to think that all the community of UN Geneva staff, including those like me, whose functions mean that we're less likely to be put at risk, do what they can to show solidarity, both with our colleagues in the front line and with the populations they serve. A good example of that was earlier this year, when staff members approached the Union after the devastating earthquake that hit Turkey and Syria to ask us to organize a humanitarian collection. As the generous donations of staff poured in, we were approached again with a concern that it was particularly difficult to get any assistance to those affected on the Syrian side of the border. when we looked into how we could make that happen, we realized the best way was to make a donation to OCHA. That means that our colleagues were the best placed to get that assistance to those in need, and that makes me very proud. The second thing I thought when asked to speak today was, what can someone who wasn't there contribute to a commemoration? And I think what we can all do is never stop being shocked and never forget how unacceptable it is that humanitarian workers are not only attacked while doing their work, but targeted because of their work. And until humanity collectively can make a world where that doesn't happen, the organizations that the humanitarian workers are employed by will have to do their very best to take care of them. And all that the staff elected to represent them can do is to try and make sure that they have the best possible and the safest possible working conditions under the circumstances, that they have the support they need, and that the voices of those actually doing the work are heard because they know what support they need to be able to keep doing their vital jobs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura Johnson. I would now like to invite Mr. Ramesh Rajasingham, Head and Representative of OCHA, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in Geneva, and Director of the Coordination Division. Ramesh.
Director General, High Commissioner, Mr. Mohammed Hassan, Laura Dolce, and friends and colleagues, as you've heard today, the tragedy of the Canal Hotel bombing was life-changing for families and friends of the 22 colleagues we lost on that day in Baghdad 20 years ago. And like Ahmed, I vividly remember a journey I made to accompany the casket of my colleague back to her family in America. And it is through these memories that the significance of today, the World Humanitarian Day, comes into focus. And it's truly a day to honor those that we have lost, first and foremost, remembering their lives, their friendship, and the mark that they have made on this world. It's also a day to speak up loud and clear, as many others have done today, for the safety and security of thousands of humanitarians who have followed in their footsteps and carry on their work. The statistics are grim. Every year, nearly 6 times, over 100 people, mainly all aid workers, are killed in the line of duty. And so far this year, 62 humanitarian aid workers have been killed in crises around the world, 84 have been wounded, and 34 kidnapped, according to the data from the Aid Worker Security Database. Last year, 116 were killed, overwhelmingly local aid workers who carry by far the biggest burden of risk. And a total of 444 humanitarians were victims of attacks. Every loss is heartbreaking and utterly unacceptable to our community. Every death or injury also is a ray of hope taken from the people that we serve. Every year, World Humanitarian Day is also an occasion to pay tribute to the thousands of local and international aid workers who, whenever a disaster strikes, are the first to raise their hands and rush to the scene to help save and improve the lives of others, often putting their own lives at risk on the line and often paying the ultimate price. We call for their protection as we call for the protection and well-being of dignity of all people affected by crises. Friends and colleagues, we in OCHA have launched a global campaign with the hashtag #NoMatterWhat to highlight humanitarians' unwavering commitment to the people we serve. And we invite everyone here and elsewhere to join this campaign via the World Humanitarian Day website on social media. Let your voice also be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramesh. And I would encourage you to look at the hashtag #NoMatterWhat and read the World Humanitarian Day 2023 manifesto. It's very well presented. Now it's time for a little music, a short musical interlude kindly provided by the United Nations Music Club and the UN Choir in Geneva. After we listen to the music, there will be a wreath-laying ceremony outside room 20.
We will sing in Chinese.
轻轻地奔腾的太阳，为你把眼泪擦干，这天心永远属于你，告诉我不
Thank you. And for our last song, we will sing what for us is very much an anthem of the United Nations Choir, because our goal is to spread a message of peace. And this song is called Let There Be Peace on Earth. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as our Father. Children all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as our Father. Children all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my soul and vow, to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
Thank you very much to the UN Music Club and the choir. We certainly needed that musical interlude. And now I would like to invite you all to proceed just outside this room for the wreath-laying ceremony, which will be followed by a reception offered by OCHA and the Permanent Mission of Switzerland. Wreath-laying ceremony outside room 20. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We will have a brief wreath-laying ceremony, and I would like to invite Her Excellency, the Director General of the United Nations Office in Geneva, to lay a large bouquet of flowers in the center of the table and to light the 2 candles. I would also like to invite the representative of OCHA to join the Director General at the table, Ramesh. Thank you, Director General, USG, Tatiana Valovaya, and thank you, Ramesh. I would now like to invite representatives of survivors and families of the victims of the attacks against United Nations offices in Baghdad, representatives of survivors and families of the victims, to lay flowers at the table. Representatives of the families, thank you. I would now like to invite the permanent representative of the Republic of Iraq to the United Nations office in Geneva and the permanent representative of Switzerland to lay flowers at the wreath support. Thank you, shukran. I would now like to invite other guests who wish to honor the memory of colleagues who lost their lives to light a candle and put them on the table. There's a basket over there, I believe it contains tea candles, and there are lighters on either side of the basket, so please don't be shy. Anyone who wants to honor the memory of friends, relatives, victims, staff members who wish to do so are welcome. Light the candle and put it on the table, moment of reflection. And then remember, there's a reception waiting for you on the other side of those panels. Refreshments offered by OCHA and the Permanent Mission of Switzerland. And as soon as you all finish lighting the candles, please proceed to the reception behind those panels, I believe. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes this ceremony. Those of you who have lit a candle, please proceed to the reception, which is on the left, my left in front of the chamber over there, for refreshments. Thank you.